What's up, guys? Welcome to the Mafia Championship Podcast, the second episode. Sorry about that. I had to replay the teaser because I think I played it without sound the first time, but hopefully you got sound on that second try. Hello, everyone. My name is Thingyman. I'm the founder of Mafia Universe, and I'm the founder of the Mafia Championship. The Mafia Championship, the 7th season, is ongoing right now. We've already had 2 games finish. In the last couple of days, we had 1 town win, 1 Mafia win, so that's exciting. It seemed like it might be a somewhat balanced season, a balanced setup compared to previous years. We don't know yet. The jury's still out on that, of course. Anyways, we've been doing this since 2013, and it's growing every year. And I just want to say thanks to everyone who's following, everyone who's spectating out there, everyone who's commenting excitingly, everyone who's representing their community. We have a bunch of new communities this season. I want to say thanks to everyone who's ever helped or supported the championship in one way or another. It's all of it very, truly appreciated. So thank you, guys. You're the reason we do this, and I'm just happy to see all the friendships, all the bonds, and everything it's created throughout the years. We even had a marriage created from this. Come on, guys. If that's not hype, I don't know what is. So just to sum up, if there's anyone out there listening to this podcast, and this will both be out on YouTube and Spotify and Google and every other place as well. If everyone's listening and they're wondering what is the Mafia Championship or what even is Mafia, well, Mafia, you have to Google that. I'm not going to explain that. You may know it as Werewolf. You may know it as Town of Salem, Witch Hunt, Lupus and Tabula, Slasher, Murderer, or by many other names. But essentially, it's this awesome psychological game. And the championship is an annual event where we try to pit a bunch of representatives from different communities against each other. And it takes place on a forum. It takes place on Mafia Universe, which is a website designed to partly support these games, but also other games automated. This season, we have 165 communities. And of those 165 communities, and this is part of what we're getting into today, part of the theme for today's episode is all the different mediums that you can play Mafia in. So it originated as a live game in, I believe, 1986. This Russian psychology professor, Dmitry DaveDob, cool guy. I've emailed him, hoping to get him on the podcast someday. We'll wait and see on that. I haven't asked him yet, but I think he might say yes, so let's see. Anyways, he created the game, and then a werewolf variant became popular, and the game spread all over the world as a real-life game. Like, people would play it as a party game in person at parties, in summer camps, etc. It became more popular in certain countries, in Eastern Europe and in a lot of Asian countries. It became super popular. It's somewhat popular in the States, from what I understand it, as a summer camp game, and then in other places, not as popular. But of course, eventually, it moved to forums. People started playing on the forums. They want to play it with people, friends from long distance, or just new acquaintances online. From there, it grew to browser games, because as the internet grew, it became more internet games were created. So we had browser games. We had Epic Mafia, I believe, was the first one in English, at least the first popular one. But then we have Town of Salem, we have Throne of Lies, and several others. And then, of course, the era of Twitch came about, and the ordinary person would have a webcam. So the video Mafia variant became very popular. And so I think that is a good introduction to show you my 4 guests today. And guys, you can turn on your microphones now, because with us today, we have 4 representatives of the 4 different main variants. Let's just say that. We have ryanyb, let's just call you Ryan for today.
Just Ryan.
Yeah, just Ryan. Representing Town of Salem, the very popular browser game. Also, I think it's you buy it on Steam now, right? It originated as a free browser game, but now you buy it on Steam. It's become very popular. A lot of the big Twitch streamers play it. Then we have the reigning champion, Beck, with us today. Beck for episode 2. I had to invite Beck. He was the guy who came with me with the idea of doing a podcast 2 years ago. So, of course, glad to have Beck back. We have, and he's representing Forum. But as you'll find out, most of us have played, I think all of us have played all 4 variants. And we love all 4 variants, I think. Maybe we have a preference, but we'll be talking about that today. Shakespeare, 3rd person, representing in real life Mafia. I got confused there because we're all popular with, we've all played all the different variants. But he's representing real life Mafia. And a former representative, Shakespeare, played, I think, 3 seasons back.
2 seasons back, yeah.
2 seasons back, yeah, he played. And
most recently, I've been into Video Mafia for obvious reasons, but also even before the obvious reasons became obvious, we also started
yeah,
Video Mafia stuff.
Exactly. That was why I was almost got myself accused. I was about to say Video Mafia because you're also very popular in Video Mafia, of course. But he played 2 seasons ago. You may know him from him doing very well in this game, placing second, surviving as a wolf, or Mafia, Scum, sorry, I use those interchangeably, and then dropping out of the Mafia Championship.
No regrets. Let me show you my tattoo. No regrets.
Yeah, and I think Shakespeare is the first person to ever, well, at least drop out in the fashion that he did. Or at least the first person to drop out, actually. Let's say that, because there are other people that couldn't play the wildcards or the finals because of scheduling issues. But Shakespeare is the first person to willingly drop out and forgo his spot because he earned a wildcard spot with the second place. DaveDob, representing Video Mafia. What's up, Dave?
How's it going?
And I have to imagine there are a lot of MUs watching this. They, of course, know Dave. Dave the Dob. Happy to have you here.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, and also, I think 2 or 3 seasons ago? Season 5, yeah. Season 2
seasons ago.
Yeah, played season 5, made it to wildcards, did a stellar job. So we've had 3 people here who played. Ryan hasn't played, so what's up with that, Ryan?
Not. You know, I get scared of the championships. I just want to go hide in my nice little forum hole and not explore. So I'm pretty happy.
Yeah, that's fair enough. Fair enough. We'll lure you in one day.
Eventually, I'm sure.
We have a lot of people following. Thank you to everyone following. We have people commenting on our beard games. Beck's beard is getting a lot of respect. I apparently need to step up my beard game. Our Apocalypse says, Era, we're on staff together. How can you treat me like that? You're supposed to be biased here.
15 minutes ago.
Yeah, you can see kind of the facts, Ryan to Shakespeare, then to Dave, then finally to Beck. We're getting there. Don't worry.
Wait till Thingy finds out who I am. Right. Oh yeah, Amy. So it's my staff shitting on me right now. Thanks.
It do be like this. Yeah.
It do be like this. All right. And actually, I want to just mention one more quick fact that I just realized before we move on to the more general subjects that we're going to be talking about. This season, we have 11 qualifiers, we have 3 semifinals, and we have 1 finale game, which adds up to 15 games total, which I believe is a record. So we're getting a lot of bang for the buck this season. At least if you like Mafia Championship, you're getting a lot of bang for the buck. Well, if you don't like it, then you could just not read. All right. So I've introduced you guys, and let's do a quick like a trip around the table, or however you say in English. I want to have you guys talk about how you got into the game and specifically comment on the version or the variant that you're representing. How did you get started, and are you still playing, and etc. Ryan, we can start with you.
Sure. So I'm Ryan. I got roped into Mafia as a lot of people my age did. I'm early 20s. I went to a summer camp and we were playing at camp. And then I was like, wow, this is kind of cool, and just stuck with it. When I was in high school, Town of Salem came around, and it, spread through high schools and middle schools, and everyone was playing Town of Salem. And so I played a little bit of TOS. Eventually, I got pulled into the forums. I started playing a lot more forum. Then I got roped into video, and I started playing video. Now I am one of the moderators of Town of Salem's Forum Mafia. I also play a bunch of, I guess, IRL, real life Mafia with friends via either Secret Hitler or something else of the sort. Yeah.
Let me just, sorry, it's because someone's saying that there's maybe sound issues. I turned up the sound right now, but they're also not sure if it's Ryan's sound. How's the sound right now for Ryan and guys and chat? Can you hear Ryan fine now that I turned up the volume?
Let me do my mic real quick.
It is. I don't have any issue with Ryan. I'm pretty sure it's just this person's computer.
It's just that 2 people said it, so that's all right.
Sometimes Twitch becomes very, very finicky with sound. Refreshing, especially if you're on mobile, might be a good idea.
The whole stream is a bit quiet. All right. Well, I guess hopefully you can turn up the sound, the whole sound. I'll try. I can turn up Zoom a bit more here, I think.
I'll try to bump my sound up.
All right. My own sound is pretty high, loud now. All right. I hope this is fine. All right. It should be the same sound levels as last time. I can hear you guys fine at least. Thingy's mic's good. Yeah. Thanks, Germ. All right. Yeah. So Ryan, the
Yes.
Town of Salem. Have you tried?
Yes.
Have you tried other browser variants?
Yeah, so I've kind of jumped around a little bit. I've tried Throne of Lies. I've tried just a kind of a variety of the stuff around there. I am here representing it. I can talk about it at length, but I will not say it is my favorite. I definitely prefer other forum. I mean, all the other three I think are. We'll see where this goes. Fair
enough. We'll leave it on a cliffhanger. All right. Beck, here representing Forum. We talked about this briefly last time, I think, but like when did you start? And yeah, you can speak to.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was first introduced to Mafia or Werewolf, as I call it now, in 2009. And I actually was first introduced to it through Forum. I was on like a Flash game forum. Kind of that's what I did when I was like 14. And so through that, I kind of became more invested in kind of the elements and everything, and it was fun just to participate with new people. I've played IRL, with friends as well when I was in high school, when I was a senior in high school, and then I've also played a bit of browser. I played on Town of Salem, but mostly here Forum. I think I played 1 or 2 games video as well. I'm probably going to be playing more of that in the near future too. But mostly Forum. I would say 90% of my Werewolf career is on Forum. I love it. Yeah.
All right, awesome. We have a Forum lover. Then we have Shakespeare.
I started in 2014, kind of. So I had one game when I was a 10th grader with my history teacher, and he played the very hardcore like Russian variant, in which the mafia have to agree on the kill independently at night. So that sucked. That wasn't very good. Like it didn't make me love the game. But then in college I had a very positive experience one night, and me and my best friend were like, we have to make a club out of this. Like we at least have to play this more often because it's enormous fun. Unfortunately, our friends were not very receptive to this. They were like, we have papers to write and books to read, and we were like, well, we want to play Mafia. So we founded Liars Club in college. And then for the last 6 years, we've been making live clubs pretty much everywhere we go. And like Ryan, I'm also a convert to another type of playing. I still think live play is superior. I think live play is the only way to play the true game. I think everything else is a derivative work that has its own merits, but everything else is kind of like a mirror image, a mirage of what the game is supposed to be. Anyway, so a few years ago, we started hosting the Liars Club seasonal championships, very much inspired in a sense from the Mafia Universe Championship, in which we did video Mafia competitions. And we've had 2 seasons of that, and we've had multiple smaller events. Recently, we've transitioned to just doing one-day events. So when we're discussing, like, is there a better way to do a Mafia Championship? Is there a better way to do Mafia competition? I can really tell you some stories about that because I don't think many people understand how much work and how much hassle it is to organize one of these things, no matter what the format.
That is true. And we'll get back to a lot of what you said right there about which format is superior, if there's any superior one, and also Liars Club. I want to talk more about that because, well, I'm not sure if you, I sort of think you sort of said, but in a way, it may be partly spawned from discussions we had and some issues you took with Mafia Championship.
Oh yeah,
Or, yeah.
I am priming the people for what's to come.
Yeah. All right. DaveDob. What's up?
Yeah, so I started when I consider playing Mafia seriously in 2015. I'm actually coming up on my 5 years. I think on Wednesday is my 5 years playing Mafia.
Congrats.
I played before starting playing Mafia seriously, which was on Daily Mafia. I played a bit like casually with some of my where I invited some of my friends to play on TOS, and I played like a week on Epic Mafia. But I seriously started playing Mafia on video after I watched the Hearthstone streamer Trump. He on a Wednesday night transition from his stream to go to Ryuzilla's channel for Super Mafia All Stars, and I fell in love with the game. Watching that, I thought it was such an intriguing game. So after watching that stream, I followed DM. I observed DM for like a couple of months before I got the guts and graduate high school and could actually play DM games at night. And from there, I've played on DM. I've played on the two now defunct Pope Run Mafia Next and Mafia Live TV. I play on Mini Mafia, which I have the shirt here for today. I've been invited to be a Game One All Star. I think a year and a half ago, which I just took my severance package from that because I can't play as consistently anymore. But there was a time, and there was a time where I'd just play Video Mafia every day when I was first starting out. I loved it so much, and though because my schedule has kind of like fallen out of favor for Forum Mafia, where I can pick it up whenever I need to, whereas I need to cut out like 2 or 3 hours out of my night to play Video Mafia. There's still a love there for me where I can go into a Video Mafia game and just enjoy myself. Honestly, I still find it so much fun.
What I mostly took from that is that there is someone out there, there is a Trump out there that we should be thankful to. I actually know Trump from way back when I started playing Mafia, or Werewolf as we call it on that side. I know him way back from 2009. And another fun fact about Trump, or Lucky Luck as I know him as, is that he is the player to have played the most forum Mafia games in the world. Really? He is. He's played more than 400 games of forum Mafia. At least if we're not counting turbos, if we're not counting like small 1 hour games, then he is the person who has played the most forum Mafia out of anyone, from what I know. At least when I checked the statistics 2 years ago.
I only knew him from Hearthstone.
Yeah, he was a big time Mafia player. Loved the game. He played a lot on 2+2, the big American poker forum, and he played a lot on Board Game Geek. It had about 200 games on each of those. So he dabbled for sure. Right, we have some comments in the chat that I actually want to read up. The main, let's see. Right. Varanus, I think he's also from Town of Salem, says, I'm pretty sure 9% of people that play for Mafia there on Town of Salem servers don't play Town of Salem itself. And that's because they realize Town of Salem is RNG essentially, while Forum is skill. So we have a first very severe statement brought up here. How do
Varanus is my co-mod.
Oh. So how do you respond to those allegations towards Browser Mafia, or at least Town of Salem?
Okay, so I have a whole take here about kind of how all these different formats kind of interact, right? So first came real life, and it was really great. Like it's a fantastic format, and I totally agree that it's like the most pure way to play, and it's probably the best if you can do it. But like it's hard, man. Like you got to get a bunch of people together, and you got to organize it, and especially with the coronavirus going around, like that's really, really hard, if not impossible. So there's a very high barrier there. And let's talk about video. We've got to find a Video Mafia community, which is hard to find, and there's kind of a high barrier to entry.
Very small right now. Very small.
DaveDob, like you said, like you've got to want to put your face out there, and like there's a level of confidence that you need to go out onto video, which not everyone has. And so, it's not necessarily easy. And then forum games might last like from anywhere from a week to a month or longer. Yeah. That's a big time commitment. So I kind of think these browser games popped up, that they fill a really good niche, which is to the more, and I'm going to put this in many, many heavy air quotes, casual person who wants to spend a little bit of time when they want to with low commitment. So for that type of stuff, it's really great. Now, the issue is if you want to support that type of play, you need infrastructure to do it. So you need money, you need like a company to make a game, maybe, you need a community, and you need to hold your audience. So for games like Town of Salem, for games like Throne of Lies, they need to appeal to as many people as possible to keep the revenue coming. And there, as many people as possible appeals to kind of the fast game, lots of feature creep, lots of fun abilities that don't necessarily work super well when you think about them a lot. So they're appealing to the kind of less hardcore, I put in many air quotes, type of player. So with that being said, I think there's a lot of people who really enjoy browser who might not enjoy other formats, but I also think that there's a good spot in other formats for people that wouldn't necessarily enjoy browser. Very diplomatic.
That's a great take.
That's a very interesting and I think a very correct take. And that's not to say what because if I'm gonna be harsh, what you're basically saying is that generally maybe the player base playing browser games are not as averagely skilled as in other variants. But
sure.
But I can attest myself that we have had very skilled players come from those variants and show up big in the Mafia Championship.
Oh yeah.
I think that there is room for someone to develop a very high level of play and skills in that in browser games. So while the average level, because of just what they cater to, is maybe lower, I think there is a very high ceiling still possible, because then you can get a lot of experience very quickly with those games. And you can be exposed to a lot of different roles and different mechanics, which, especially in the Mafia Championship, where you may be exposed to things that you aren't used to, is a great benefit. Like if you come from maybe 2+2, where we mostly only play vanillas, and you have to play a MASH type game. Well, we also play MASH, but whatever, you get my point. Like from another place where they maybe only play one type of game all the time, it can be hard to adapt. But that's just talking in terms of a championship and adapting. Beck, have you tried browser, and what is your take on browser versus forum?
Yeah. So I played browser. I've played Throne of Lies maybe one or two times, and I've played Town of Salem several times, especially when I was starting out. Because like Brian said, there's some immediate gratification as someone new to the game. Relatively, it had everything that I needed in one spot to understand the mechanics of what was going on in terms of roles and phases and everything like that. It spelled it out very nicely for me. So I really enjoyed that when I did play. But the difficulty you might then get with browser is also there are players that will enter game because it's only 20, 30, 40 minutes, and they'll just mess around. And so for me personally, and again, teach their own. There's really no wrong way to play Mafia as long as you're playing. But for me, I was definitely seeking a higher skill level, and so over time that translated to forum, again for the convenience reasons that Ryan stated, and that's just why it stuck. And I'll talk more about the pros and cons of forum in a little bit, but that was kind of my experience with Town of Salem in particular. And I think Ryan really hit the nail on the head there in terms of what it offers and how that can be perceived by different people depending on what they're looking for, because that's really the whole point. Werewolf, what format best fits what you're looking for at the moment. So,
right, because I mean, we could have entitled this podcast "Which variant is the best."
Right.
I'm not going to do that. I mean, that's not what about. We all love exactly. It's about preferences, and mostly I think everyone, especially here, because we're all part of communities, and I think we actually all have a role in different communities, at least at one time or another, where we want to like spread the love for the game. So we all try to like spread the love for the game.
Oh, yeah.
And you're also doing that by appearing here, so thank you. And like, I love Mafia, and I want to see it succeed everywhere. And for it to succeed everywhere, we need to support all the areas where it exists, because I think they help each other. And I think like one fact that speaks to that is that we've all tried all variants. I want to take it over to Shakespeare, because I know this is also what he wanted to get into. Like, well, you did say that real life Mafia is it's the real deal. How would I'll give it over to you, Shake.
So just to stay on topic at least for a little bit, in one sentence, I've played one game of Epic Mafia. I didn't get the UI and I quit. I never went back. So maybe I'm like a low level IQ, but I didn't like their UI at all, so I never went back. I think when we were making the first Liars Club setup, we went to them for the role list or like for some roles to get inspiration from, because we were very bad in the beginning of designing the game. Anyway, in terms of like live play, it is very interesting, because I do believe that anybody who enjoys playing any variant of Mafia would enjoy playing live, and I'm yet to meet a person who's like, maybe DaveDob will come in here and say I don't enjoy playing live at all. But I think if you enjoy any variant of this, unless you really suffer from some crippling anxiety of interacting with other people live, I think you have a great time enjoying just hanging out with other people and talking to them, because it is in real time. It's the my best friend, my co-founder of Lice Club, always says it's the gamification of human communication. It's the closest you can get to having some kind of adversarial situation with people without going to something physical. It is great. It's so awesome to just have that in a live setting. It comes nowhere close to any other pastime I've had. I wanted to touch upon how well this translates to video, and I think it translates surprisingly well, and it touches upon what Ryan was telling us here, which is something at Lice Club we've talked a lot about, which is how do we appeal to the most people we can. And I think the best way to appeal to other people is not through chat, because chat is very impersonal. Chat is just you in your if chat was the best way to do human communication, this wouldn't be a podcast. This would be an interview written in a newspaper or on a forum or anything else. But just having some kind of audio visual feedback. Maybe it's just audio without video, maybe it's audio with video, but I think you need the constant reminder that there is somebody out there. So if we're talking about taking the live experience and putting it into another context, I think video is the best you can do at that point. Because I agree, taking 15 people and having them all be in the same room at the same time, understanding the same game, like even the room is hard. Believe me, like when we were, one of the reasons I'm in Berkeley, I think I can dox myself at least a little bit, but one of the reasons I'm in Berkeley is because when I was moving across the country in the United States to go to graduate school, I was like, well, this building has a really nice room for Mafia, so I'm gonna go live there, like that. That's how much Mafia actually decided some parts of my life. Not everybody has access to these facilities, but almost everybody, as Ryan was saying, has access to a webcam, or as thing you said, I'm not sure who raised that point, but almost everybody has access to a webcam, even if it's at the base of your laptop, even if it's like a really shoddy $5 webcam from Amazon. By the way, Amazon's out of webcams. Just think about that. Amazon's out of webcams. Anyway, so my current stance is live, best format by a mile, but video is by far probably the most appealing format to the masses. And I think, especially because of the current situation, people will come around to that, because people are trying to play games with their friends on Zoom. They're not that worried, I think, as long as it's just friends, that like the webcam is no longer seen as a disintrusion into your life. It's more seen as a tool. I want to keep in touch with my friends. So I think people will come around, and I think Video Mafia will really, really start excelling. So Daily Mafia, you should be ready for the influx of players.
All right, I think I want to actually bring it back to Beck then, because I think we need someone to speak about forum then versus this, because what's different about forum? Why do you prefer that? What is it like? I have some thoughts myself, but I'll let you start, and then I can add on to that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So first, I agree with a lot of what Shakespeare just said as well, in terms of accessibility. I totally think he's on the mark. We're going to see a surge here in terms of interaction through webcam. He's right. It's, if there's any silver lining to what's going on, it's changed accessibility and people's willingness to connect. So that's exciting for me, on that note. Speaking directly of forum, though, what I love most about forum is two things. First, as a player. I really attached to forum because it operated around my life less than me having to operate around its life. And some will disagree with this because, as they know me and as I know others, it's easy to get really into a game and let it control, your life at times, which has, again, its own pros and cons. But by and large, it's very easy to pick up and put down. And so if I want to just post for an hour a day, I can do that. And depending on my skill level or the other players that I'm playing with, it's totally understandable. Or if I have a day off and I really want to invest that time in, really get ingrained in the game, I could do that too. And so it creates that flexibility that, other formats don't have for a reason. But that's what I love so much about forum as a player. On the other side of the coin for forum in particular, what I most love is hosting. I'm a host, and if most people know me, they know that I enjoy to host games. Some of my early hosting experience were, IRL, and they were great, but I quickly realized that if you want to host a big game, and when I say a big game, like a huge game, a MASH, where you can get 60 to 100 to almost 200 players, obviously that becomes, I think, in a lot of ways less your typical werewolf. And I have opinions about setup we'll get to in the future. But for me, that was a really great way to push the boundaries of what werewolf is and what it can do. And so, when you look at games like Mashes or something like a Turbo, you can change these phases and you can change the roles that you include. And it's all understood because a forum can manage that capacity, can manage that load. So, that's a quick kind of snapshot of how I view forum and why I love it so much. Is as a player, there's a sense of convenience to it. You lose elements that Shakespeare and Ryan have added that I think are core to Mafia as well. But you gain that convenience, which is important for me, especially going through college. And then as well as a host, as someone who enjoys hosting and getting creative with roles and role sets and new mechanics and things like that to really push the boundary of how people think. I think there's no platform that supports that better than forum. So
I think those are very good thoughts, and I agree with them. What I think I can add to that is that, as Holy Flare says in the chat, forum is for the big brain analysis players, which is not necessarily to say that there is less good analysis going on in live games, but there's just more options, or there's more time, and like you can do quotes. You can actually have on the record what people have said, and you can use that.
Oh yeah.
You can call people out in both roles, and I think that's just a lot of fun to play around. And like another thing is like forums as well as browser games could also be more appealing to, people that aren't as outspoken or outgoing, who maybe aren't as willing to show their face on video or comfortable in a live setting. So it may also appeal to a different audience. And I think that's good that we have it appealing to different audiences so it can be as broadly reaching as possible. And then, like, you're totally right about hosting. I didn't even think of that myself, but, like, the possibilities, like, the mashes, like, the big themes. And to be fair, I know at least Daily Mafia has done this before. Like, I know they've hosted Harry Potter themes and such. But I do think it's more smooth with forums. Because, like, you can prepare the flavor. You can have a lot of flavor. You can create separate threads. And, like, you can really prepare the roles and have super complex roles, like Uncle Dynamite roles, for those of you playing. Yeah. That's a person from Tools 2 creating just writing 2 pages for each role is ridiculous. And you can't do that live, and you can't do that for Video Mafia. So that's at least one of the advantages. Like, you can do really complex games, and like you have the ITAs, the in-thread attacks, which to those who don't know what that is shots, basically, like day shots. Every player has a day shot they can use another player. Usually it's not a 100% to hit, and that's just a lot of fun. You could do that for Video Mafia. I think that that might
Banks
be fun.
I was about to say, Banks has done ITAs in Video Mafia. Basically what it is, though, is that we, like, everyone just goes into a channel, like, created by him. And you just fire, and you just type in your ITAs, like, as the day's still going on. It's fantastic. It's so good.
Is this more of an issue of automation than anything else? And, like, shout out to McKay's for all the work he does on MU. But this seems like an issue of automation more than anything else. I will push back slightly on this.
I would agree. It's probably slightly a thing of automation, where it's like, if you were to run it on a Video Mafia game or a live Mafia game, you would have, like, you would have someone, like, slip you an ITA, and you're just like, all right, I have to rand it first. So
yeah. All right. And Dave, finished off with the Video Mafia.
Yeah. So I think, again, a lot of great points from these guys about their own different variants. I agree pretty much with what they say in terms of their variants. I can't say too much about IRL, because IRL is actually the only one I haven't played. I've been meaning to try to get people to play IRL. No one would join me on it. It was kind of upsetting. But so the thing for me about Video Mafia, and Shakespeare kind of said best when he said it's IRL Mafia where you don't really need to grab all the people in the room, right? So you're able to connect with people. Most of them, when you first enter, you probably don't know, but after you've played a couple of games, you've seen a bunch of people a lot of times, you know who's who. You then kind of get that bond and idea of certain people, and once you get comfortable with them, there's that whole idea where you are just talking to people about this Mafia game that's going on. There's that personal communication there, and it's kind of hard to explain like what about Video Mafia makes it different that hasn't already been stated, but a lot of what makes Video Mafia unique is just the accessibility of it. Like you just need you have a laptop, a webcam, and access to Discord. Like you can probably just jump in as soon as you feel ready to be on webcam, which has always been the one hurdle especially with forum people when I talk to them about Video Mafia, is because I think people who come from Video Mafia are pretty good on forum, and it would probably be vice versa. People who come from forum probably decent at Video Mafia. But the one hurdle that everyone's come to is, I don't want to show myself on camera, or more specifically, I don't want to show myself on camera on stream, which is the big hurdle with getting people to recruit to Daily Mafia or Mini Mafia. So it's always going to be that thing where you're going to need the comfort level first. And I've always believed that, even though sometimes I'll freely admit DM games are not the most friendly games on the face of the planet. I will put my hand up and say I have been a part of that, most certainly. But there is always a comfort, a thing where you will eventually get comfortable if you just stick with it. And I've always found it fun to just go into a Video Mafia game. You don't even have to take it seriously sometimes. There's tiers to the seriousness depending on where you're playing. Like DM is anywhere from serious to casual depending on who's playing. Mini Mafia, I've had a blast just taking the piss and openly PR hunting as either alignment. and then you play on Super Mafia All Stars, where it's a lot more serious. It's a lot more competitive. People are actively trying to play to their win con, and there's that, okay, how do I actually solve this game? There is tiers to it depending on how you want to play the game, and it's kind of that variety that I think keeps the appeal of Video Mafia fresh to me, where each individual stream and community has its own kind of set way of plays to keep things fresh, right? So that's kind of what separates each communities from each other. And you could probably say the same thing about like each forum has its own meta, each browser probably has its own meta, each IRL grouping definitely has its own meta. So it's always something that you're going to be you're always going to have a fresh outlook depending on where you play, which is always the great thing about having so many different communities to play games in, of course.
Yeah. And to further talk about the accessibility, which you touched on, to Video Mafia, like it's so much more accessible than Forum Mafia. Like the barrier to entry to Forum Mafia is insane. Like like compared to the other variants, it's pretty insane. Like you have to use the forums. Like a lot of young people don't even use forums nowadays. You have to figure out the software. There's a lot of different softwares. It's not necessarily intuitive. Like browser games are designed to be intuitive. Real life is just real life. You're used to talking to people. You've tried that before. Video Mafia is just talking to people. And like the amount of time that you often have to use on forum games is also insane in some places. Like it's either insane or the games are not fun because people aren't posting. Like a lot of people consider playing a Forum Mafia full-time job, which is certainly, I would say, a downside. And I wish it wasn't always like that. I'm trying to push for more of a light community on Mafia Universe as well. I want to get your guys' thoughts on that as well. Like how much freaking time it takes, and also like it's weird. Like we're having this championship, the forum. It's a forum Mafia Championship. Like it takes place on a forum because that's where it originated, and like I learned of all the forum communities. So that's what it is. Like it's not. It should be called the Forum Mafia Championship. Like I'm not trying to say like it encompasses it at all. It's pretty forum based, but other communities are welcome to come and play because why not? That's what it's ultimately about, creating bonds, right? But it's a forum based competition, and not a lot of people play forum. Like if you look at how many people have tried the game Mafia on a worldwide, worldwide, it's less than 1% probably that have played it on a forum, right? But
I think the same thing applies to all of our formats. I think all of our formats are extremely niche when you consider like the vast, like everything except IRL. Like take out IRL because IRL is everything from like, summer camps with 12-year-olds to, Russian American adults getting together in SF every Friday night in really fancy houses to play Mafia in a really well thought out way. Like there's a wide range of that happening, but like we're very, very niche experience, and I think that's like a big shame.
That I like totally agree, and like we're probably going to touch on this later as well because it relates to like what I want to talk about in terms of like having Mafia competitions and being like mainstream, because that's the big issue. A lot of people know this game, but they know it by different names and with different rules and different setups, and that just makes it so difficult to like get everyone like gathered around this. Like it makes it insanely difficult. Yeah, I'm not sure if any of you guys, if you other guys have thoughts on like the time it takes to play for Mafia. But
I mean, it's like any other type of Mafia, I think, where like I said with video Mafia, because there's no like, oh, I can take a break from the forum to play later. Like you have to carve out. I know with video Mafia, I'm just like, okay, I'm carving out 2 to 3 hours of my night, guaranteeing I can play this game the whole way through if it comes to it. And with the browser, like sure you can just X from a game if you're an asshole, but other than that, it's like you're carving out the time to play that browser game. IRL, you're probably carving out hours to get with this group of people and play a game. So it's always like sure with forum, because you have the day phases and night phases over so many hours. It's like I can see where it would be believed that's like a time hurdle, but at the same time, for most other formats, it's an immediate time. It's immediate like time carve out. Whereas with forum, okay, I can play at this moment, stop, take a break, do whatever, come back, continue. So there's always going to be some kind of time concern, I think, regardless of the format, just because the other ones you're carving out time areas to keep playing.
We have thanks, Dave. We have a question from the chat. I want to direct this to Beck because I think you look like the kind of person who would know how to answer this. Frog from Mafia Universe and StarCraft 2 Mafia asks, I'm vaguely aware of the TikTok. Would this be a viable platform for Mafia?
As opposed to me, interesting. So thank you, Frog. I'll be honest. I don't have a TikTok. I don't really use it. I don't know if that makes me old now or something. I'm used to Vine. That probably makes me sound old. Anyway, yeah. I mean, is it going to be viable? I don't know. Is it going to be fun? I don't know. Is it possible? Yeah. Why not?
Beck, you're taking this question way too seriously.
Yeah. But it's an interesting question because there's a lot of quick video formats and things out there. Like, there are other social media platforms that play this, religiously. Facebook's one that comes to mind. Now, obviously different from TikTok, but I know it was meant as a joke, but it's an interesting question all the same, where if you find people who want to play, I think, you can make it happen just about anywhere. So
for sure. And like,
if he starts one, let me know. I'm in.
I think there's a lot of potential with this idea. Like, just hit me up on Discord after this. We'll talk about
all right. All right. You heard it, chat. Beck and Shakespeare will create a chat after this on TikTok, the TikTok Mafia Championship, TikTok Mafia games. All right. And like a lot of people bring up in chat, Telegram, like you brought up, Beck, Facebook. Like there are a lot of games taking place on Facebook. There's also a lot of games taking place on Telegram, which is a messaging app. It's very popular in Asia and certain other regions of the world. And we have like each season, at least for the last 3 or 4 seasons, we have 3 to 5 Telegram communities participate, which is awesome. They have a lot of they have a Werewolf Mafia bots implemented on Telegram. Discord, like we are getting so many more Discord communities each year. Mm-hmm. It seems like I was worried, a worry that I've had with the forum Mafia Championship or the Mafia Championship is that forums as a general this is also a question to you guys. If I don't know if you agree, is our forums dying out? Like, and our social networks taking over, and like that seems to have been the rescue, in my opinion. Like that, we lost a lot of forums, but we gained new communities in Discord and Telegram, etc.
I can talk about the forums in this regard. So, I can say with relative certainty that the Town of Salem forum community is dying out. And most other communities that I've looked at have been on the decline in terms of forum play. I mean, all of the original moderators of the Town of Salem forum are gone. It's just me and Varanus now. The original, I think there were 4 or 5 original mods, and now there's 2. The amount of players we have has been declining over the past multiple years. Some of that can be pegged on us, and that's totally fine. But at the same time, I think a lot of people, at least the Town of Salem forums, got a lot of players because TOS blew up and got really big. And people looked at the forums and then got introduced to Mafia. And I think the TOS forum, Mafia forums were a pretty interesting gateway for some people to get into some more stuff. But the kind of pipeline from casual into Town of Salem forums has stopped. More or less. So TOS is definitely dying. But
yeah, someone says in chat, let me actually find the quote so I read it up right. There's too many comments, I have to scroll through them all. Jesus. Right, who said it? Well, I'll just say my quoted. Like a lot of forums, like forum mafia communities, are dependent on the site as a whole's activity. So when that site's activity as a whole dies down, the mafia activity dies down. And I played a lot of 2+2, which is a poker community, and I'm not sure how familiar you are with the poker community. Like most people know there was a poker boom, and then it sort of disappeared because there were rules in place that it became hard to play poker. So it died out, like super hardcore.
the moneymaker boom.
Yeah.
Period.
Yeah. 2003 moneymaker wins the World Series poker, shown on ESPN, and the whole world just loves the game, me included. But yeah, that died out, and I guess Holy Flare, who's originating from Team Liquid. I know, is Team Liquid doing poorly? I know they're doing somewhat poorly in Counter-Strike. Maybe that's dying out as well.
And in League, I think.
And in League.
Their Dota team is going through like ebbs and flows right now. They're inconsistent as hell.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think maybe what's happening is that forums as a whole may be sort of becoming less popular, and a lot of the already established forums are becoming less popular because what they're centered around has just become less popular, and then the new communities that would just pop up organically are just more so popping out on Discord and Telegram and other places. And I think that's just sort of the shift we're seeing. So I don't think it's that there's less of an interest in Mafia Online, and actually I think that it's the opposite. I think it's growing very much, and I think that is partly thanks to browser games. I think it's also thanks to people like Trump and other championing on Twitch. I know he's not playing as much anymore, but he used to, and other people are playing it, right? That may also mean because there's a lot of browser games now, so that when people go online and search for Mafia Online, well, they play the browser games and they don't get started on forums. That may also be a thing, right? What I want to talk about, because in Mafia Championship, you have a lot of culture clash, and this relates to the different variants. And each variant in itself has so many different rule sets, like Shakespeare also touched on earlier. How would you, speaking to your own variant that you're representing, how would you advise or how would you convert them to the other variants? It doesn't have to be form. It can just be whatever you have specific thoughts on. But how would you prepare them? How would you convert them? And how would you prepare them for the experience? We can start with you, Shakespeare.
So I was gonna bring it up at one point, but we also have difficulty converting live players to video players for the very same reason that we have difficulty converting everybody to a video play, which is, it's a scary thought being in full view of strangers. So whatever conversion you're doing, make sure that people are playing with fans. Make sure people are playing with people they already know. It's very time wasting to convert one person. It's a huge waste of time. Believe me. at one point earlier this year, I was talking to upwards of 250 people, trying to convert them one by one. It's a huge waste of time. You have to convert groups. You have to convert key users who will bring in more people. You have to convert people with clout. Like Trump is a person with clout. Like if you convert Trump back to Mafia, suddenly you have 1,000 more people just interested into this. And like Trump might be a good person to bring into Forum Mafia. I was gonna bring up the fact that there's a not an elephant in the room, but there's an elephant not in the room, which is this thing called Mafia.gg, which is a huge browser-based platform that like is mainly surviving because of the presence of a few key Twitch personalities, like I Ate Your Pie and Smash personality. I never remember his name.
Zero. Yeah.
Yeah, Zero. So you really have to focus on bringing in huge groups of players who have something in common in the first place. So if you're bringing in a bunch of people from Forum, I know Josh from Mafia 455 is doing something similar to this. He's going to the Forum websites and he's saying, "Look, I'll host Video Mafia for you. It will just be for you. It won't be streamed. Let's just play. Like, don't focus on anything. I'll just focus on making the game happen." Similarly, if you're going from, I think, live to text, it's going to be much easier. But if you're going the other way, you really have to convert groups of friends so they get over the huge lumps in the first place.
That makes sense. Like, recruit ambassadors, basically. Yeah. I think that's very true. Do any of you guys have more thoughts on that?
Yeah, I can jump off that one. I totally agree with the notion of moving groups with people that you like to play with. I think even too when Mafia Universe really started to kick off in spring 2016, I remember vividly. We were hosting Thingy Man, myself, other people on staff. We're actively hosting games designed for groups of a community to come over and play. I remember the Beltree forums, an Animal Crossing forum. I remember doing games with them. I remember seeing daily Mafia games. Bringing people all in as a group together to do that. So I think that method definitely works. I think two things when talking about moving into forum, and if anyone else, everyone here plays forum to an extent, they can chime in. The first is most definitely forum, because it is impersonal in a lot of ways, especially as a new player starting out. There's an opportunity to reinvent yourself, and so that's something I definitely enjoy about forum, is the opportunity to sign up and play a game as who you are, and then there's an opportunity down the line to create a new account and be somebody else, and that has its pros and cons. But it's easier to escape a self-imposed meta or how people may perceive you. I know myself, people may look at me differently, having been in the position I was in champs. I can create a new account and be somebody else. And so there's a lot of power in that you might not get in other formats. And so, other than maybe browser or like, that's something that I appreciate as well about forum in terms of, getting invested early. And you can do it all on your own. I think group, getting people involved is the way to go. But as an individual, we've seen plenty of individuals coming from, rogue communities or communities dying out over the years and really becoming core components of the community, which is awesome. The other thing that I would note too, on top of that with forum, is kind of the diversity of the player base, like you mentioned. Because you can't come in as an individual, you can really bring a lot of what makes you who you are to the table, and that's what Werewolf is all about. You're not limited, and this translates well to video, I think, in cases, but with that, and being anonymous, you get that in forum, where you can recreate yourself, but you can build a career, you can build a persona, you can become someone through the forum, and I've met a lot of friends now too that I enjoy specifically playing with them, and that's something that forum really fosters, even though I don't really know them well beyond that, and that's okay. So pros and cons to each of those points I made, most definitely, but that's something I would say for forum. I'll add one thing here too, in terms of people who have just started forum and are looking to get more involved in forum and everything that comes with that. My best advice, and this is probably silly because it can be applied to any format of Werewolf, is just play more games. I've learned so much more game to game to game, playing, and it sounds super silly because of course that's why you're here, but it's easy after one game of Werewolf to say, I didn't do that great, I'm not going to get any better. You learn as you go, and you learn from other people, and that's the best part about it. So especially in forum, the fact that it can facilitate so many games so quickly, with that automation is what makes it so great to get good quickly. That's something I think too.
To add on to that, I guess what forum also does is that you can like, and I did this a lot when I was new. I think a lot of new players, at least new players that are excited about the game, they read so many games, like games they weren't in. Like they read back, like all those. I want to know what are the classic games, what were the great games, what were the one with the memorable moments. I want to read those, and like it's just so exciting. Like reading a book. Like when you first, at least when I first got into it, and of course right now a lot of people reading championship games, and like I said, it's a full-time job reading these games, and people are doing it willingly because it's so exciting to follow, right?
And you get those personalities, right? You can look back, you say, I've heard of this player. Who are they? What are they like? What do they do? What makes them so great? That's something you get in forums. You can look back. I've read many games of players that I've never played with, just to kind of capture what they think, and that's something I love as well. The history that's just, it's all there. So,
which isn't to say that the same thing doesn't, in some regard, exist for Video Mafia, because you have streams and they're uploaded. Right. You have to like watch it, so there's more dedication to it. The others you can skim and you can just, that's boring. That's maybe a bit more difficult for Video Mafia because then you lose a lot of context, I imagine. But what also like at some point I also hope that like there are real life tournaments that also recorded, and like imagine, especially with those, you're gonna get hopefully epic moments, right? Because what you really relate to as a person is faces. Like that's why you also always see close-ups in shows and films, right? You want to see faces, so that's the most potential you have for feeling something. So if we can get that with Mafia, and we
recommendation for forum players, especially new ones, find an avatar that you like and stick with it for a while, right? That's a key indicator that you don't get, that lets people recognize you get that in real life and video. You don't inform unless you commit to that. So
I remember someone last week's cast said, seriously, get an avatar. I don't care if it's bad, just get one. And it's 100% true. People on forums will just kill you if they can't identify with you, like, period.
Yeah, I mean, it's not as bad as when I played Epic Mafia, where you literally got policy lynched because of not having an avatar. It's not the same in forum, I think, but it does make it more difficult. Well, actually, I'll just say this. This is a very direct statement, and I hope any representative out there listening to this will pay heed, or whatever it's called. If you have an avatar, if you don't have an avatar, you are less likely to advance, I think. Because people are just less likely to, like, get an image of who you are. They're less likely to pay attention to you. Like, it's just more difficult to distinguish you from the other players in the game. Because when you see that picture next to the post, like, oh, okay, yeah, all right. Otherwise, you have to, like, consciously each time note the name. And you're just not going to do that. Like, with so many posts, you're not going to do that. It's not realistic. So, honestly, get an avatar or you're less likely to advance. So that's a hardcore advice from me.
So I have a hot take here.
Yeah.
There was a year where I played with avatars off.
Ooh.
I just read names. I was being a bad student and playing in class, and there were occasionally some questionable avatars that people would have on forums. And I didn't want someone looking over my shoulder, looking at the avatars and like being like, I wonder what Ryan is doing right now. And so I would turn off the avatars. And I got used to it and forgot to turn it back on. And one day I was in a forum game and someone was talking about someone's avatar. And I was like, why don't you just turn off the avatars? And everyone got so angry at me. and so I have them back on. I have them back on now. But no. Because this was in TOS, and so I know everyone, and so I know the names, right? If this is if you're in a new community, then please, God, turn on your avatars, because it's so much easier to attach a personality to an image than it is to a name, especially an internet name that might be like gibberish. But it is possible to do it with them off. It sucks.
I agree. It sucks. McCase in the chat writing
I see DLGN asking me a question. If I noticed a change in my play. I did not. Now, once again, this is because this is on a forum where I knew everybody. And so I already have like good mental images built up for how I think people play, for their metas, etc. But for the few games I played on MU, if I turned off Mafia, if I turned off profiles, I'd be so lost.
Also, McCase right in chat, 2+2 had some very risque avatars. 2+2, the poker forum is of course for more adult community. I know I myself had a woman as an avatar, and I wasn't mislynched in 3 years. Then I changed my avatar, and my mislynch rate went up significantly. So that might be a thing.
Aw.
Like we also had people posing
The look of
as
disgust on Beck's face when you said that.
oh, whatever. I was 18, 19.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to move on because we have like 25 minutes left. I want to like stay somewhat close to the 1 hour, 1.5 hour. So I want to turn our attention to the Mafia Championship because this is the Mafia Championship podcast. And I want to talk about it as a tournament and format. And I have a lot of thoughts, but I'm not going to preempt all the things that I know you're going to come with. So I'm just going to let you talk, and then I may have to defend the championship afterwards. We'll see how this goes, right? So my general question is just, do you guys like it? And or would you change anything? Do you think it can be improved?
I think I want to take the first shot at this because I want to give due appreciation for the format slowly but certainly changing to where it probably needs to end up. Like I'm a very strongly opinionated person when it comes down to specifically, especially how the format used to be 2 years ago. So I just went over a 6-page PDF I typed up after I was done with my participation. It was a part of an 18-page PDF. Only 6 pages ever became public. So eventually, thinking maybe I'll send you the full 18 pages. So the situation 5 years ago, or not 5 years ago, 2 years ago, was that the advancement was done so that the top player in the vote in each game would advance to the final game. And then the second player would be guaranteed advancement to the wildcards. And then 2 more players approximately from each game, but not guaranteed, would advance also to the wildcards based on a jury vote. So that system, thankfully, doesn't exist anymore. There's some elements of it that still exist, but there's no more advancement to the finals, which is a huge bonus for me. Like if I was to play again, like this almost brought me back for this year. Hopefully, or thankfully, we had a better representative than me, but this almost brought me back. So huge props to eliminating one of the hugest problems I saw with this. Now, there's a second outstanding problem, which is for me, there's no way to correctly and subjectively decide on a winner. And I think even the top 5 is fine, but when you get to the final, you're still going to get to the exact same situation, which is deciding on the winner through a vote feels very weird to me because we're the types of people who can rationalize any opinion we have. You know, I can have any type of opinion, and if I talk to you about it, you'll be like, yeah, this person is being completely honest, because why would they lie? Well, because you're talking to them about something they want to lie to you about. So I think in order for the Mafia Championship to be like the most legitimate firm Mafia Championship you could ever envision, it needs to have something objective that is rooted in measurable performance for the players to eventually have them declared as the champion, as opposed to the player vote. And that's my biggest problem with it.
So I guess in essence, what you're maybe saying to some degree, and if you're not saying it, it's okay. I know other people have said this, so I'm just going to say it. Some people think the Mafia Championship is essentially a popularity contest.
It used to be. Now it's a lot less of that.
Yeah,
I will give you that. It's a lot less of that, but still, the winner being decided at the end by a popular vote is a huge sore point for me.
And the question I want to ask the 3 other guys here present is, do you agree with that? And before you answer, I will agree with some of what Shakespeare says. Like I just watched Survivor, and I'm not going to spoil the result, but just in Survivor generally, I assume most people here know what it is. It's a game where people are taken out on an island, and they vote each other off, and eventually it's a winner, and the winner is voted on by the jury, which are the last 9 people eliminated or whatever. So my opinion is that whoever wins is the true winner in that because they got the votes. But that's besides the point. What happens in that games, especially with returnee games, which is seasons where previous players come to play again, is that often in the end they just end up voting for their friend. So I think that takes a lot from the format, and it touches, it relates to what Shakespeare says, which is with people are able to rationalize any decision. So if you have a friend up on the block to be voted, you're gonna find some excuse to vote for that person. Like you're just gonna choose to value that part of the game that they excelled in and the other person didn't excel in. I think there's a lot of rationalization possible, but that's also, I guess, well, actually, that is a social game, same as Mafia is a social game.
Yeah.
So there's another comparison. So I'm even for the sake of debate, I'm also talking about why there are negatives to the way we're doing this. So. And I don't even know if you guys agree or disagree. So I just want to hear your guys' thoughts on whether it's Mafia, whether this is a popularity contest, what could be done to fix it? Does anything need to be done?
I'll take the lead on this one. I think the hard part with it is that can you see is there issues with it? Absolutely, 100%. I would not dispute that. We could go into people's cognitive biases, regardless of if it's their friends or if you were a town, you would be hard pressed to vote wolves potentially or whatever it may be with that. I think the hard part with the voting process is there's no easy way to fix it without still coming up with holes. And I remember Shakespeare reading your PDF, thinking about it, I'm just like, okay, this idea fits, but there's still problems for X and Y. And I think the hard part is always going to be, say we remove the player vote and just have the jury do everything. And it's like, okay, well, the jury just participated in this championship season. Why should they have to read every single game after deciding, wild cards and what have you? I haven't seen a way yet, and maybe there is a way to like fully fix this that just hasn't been brought up yet. The world is full of infinite possibilities, but it's hard to be like, okay, yes, the voting system has flaws, but the way to fix it also has flaws, at least from what I've seen so far. And, like I know some games, that you could have questionable voting. I think luckily the 2 games I've played in, I think the votes have been fairly reasonable. I mean, I could go into things about one of my games, the votes being interesting, but for the most part, I think the votes in both my games were reasonable and no one was being malicious with their voting. But you never truly know. But at the same time, how to fix it, I think, is the other really hard part to that.
I want to hear Ryan and Beck's thoughts on this as well. I'll just briefly give some insider knowledge here without getting specific. Throughout all the seasons, this is my opinion from seeing the votes. It is my opinion that only twice has a person sent in a ballot that was clearly an attempt to rig the voting in their own favor. They were tanking the voting on other players that they deemed likely to probably advance, so they voted like for the first 3 mislynches or whatever. That has only happened twice in all the seasons, and I'll also speak honestly about what happened in those cases. We first approached the player and just tried to talk. Are those your true votes? Of course, we can't really say anything if they insist that it is the true votes. And then we inform the jury that this is how it's being done, and they can then take that into account. Ryan and Beck, what are your guys' thoughts?
Beck, do you want to go first?
Yeah, sure. I'll jump in here. So, I mean, for those that don't know too, I'm on the jury this year, obviously, and I don't, I think I'm definitely have, opinions looking at how it's been done in the past, and I won't dive into this too much to reveal kind of how we're doing it, but I definitely think after the season, it's going to be great to have another critical look at how the jury operates, and their part in Mafia Championship, considering the change that we've made to the format. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to reflect on how that works. With the semifinal game. I'll comment on that too. I think it is a fantastic change. I agree with Shakespeare. I think it's necessary. I'm glad to see that change has been made. Kind of taking a step back though and looking at how we evaluate players just in general, and again how you evaluate skill in players in Mafia outside of the championship, regardless. It's a difficult task, and you judge players differently based on alignment. And there are a lot of other factors that go beyond, who voted the most wolves as a villager and who mislynched the most villagers as a wolf, and then you incorporate, PRs, and you have to grade those differently, and then you're also comparing different players to different games that have different skill sets. So it's difficult to contextualize it down into an objective method where you can tick off boxes. I can give an example too. Let's say there was a player who had the best reads, but they were kind of a dick. Quite frankly, and they had trouble communicating with other players, and it was not fun to play with them. Are they really the best player? I would say no. And of course, that's up for debate, but that's where you kind of add in these other factors. It's not just about being the most right, it's being the one who's most able to communicate. And people can feel free to disagree with that as well, because there is no objective method to this. So that's where it adds a little bit of fun, I think, in my mind, but I agree with anyone else who says, players might be getting cheated out of their rightful place. And that's why that this is such a healthy debate to have. So keeping all that in mind, it's difficult to kind of weigh it all. I think in the future, and maybe this is, I could peel back the layer a bit here on the jury, it would be nice to see more, and this is something we're actively considering, is can you create a foundation? Can you contextualize metrics that we have? How many times did you vote, the accurate player? Or how many times did you vote at all? How many posts did you make? How many times were you voted? And look at all these things and use that as a foundation to then judge the intangibles. Like how willing were you to communicate with another player? How willing were you to work out with other wolves in wolf chat? Things like that are important, and you can't really measure those on a metric scale like you can other factors. So, to Dave's point, I think there's a lot more room to go here. And sometimes, and again, this I think is definitely up for debate. Maybe the easiest answer here is let's simplify it, keep it to voting, set the metrics like we have, most valuable player, and see what results we get. I definitely think as well on my note, you definitely do see, places where it does become a bit of a popularity contest. But I think that's, like you mentioned, thingy as well, that's a product of it being a very social game. So I think, you can't remove that entirely, but I think that if there's a way to factor in more, objective metrics, I'm sure like Shakespeare, I know he has opinions about that as well. How can we contextualize all of that and capture it together? So I guess, my long-winded answer here is I don't have an answer, but I think that we're making the right strides here, even across this last year to get closer to that. We're not there yet. I don't know if we'll ever get there, but that's how I view the championship series right now. So,
for sure. And like from the first season, like we've been fixing things every single season, and things that I wouldn't even have thought about in first season are things that we have implemented since then. So there might be a solution that we just haven't thought about yet. And also like the big inherent bias in these games with the voting. Is that like you make friendships and those people are maybe likely to vote for you, but like that big inherent bias to bring the counter argument is also, I think, very relevant to the game of Mafia. Mm-hmm. And mostly most of the people you're going to be playing with in a qualifier are not people you already know. Like at most you should know 2, if you're lucky, 3 people, but often you don't even that, right? Mm-hmm. So I think in both roles, as Townie and Mafia, like the one thing that I think everyone can agree on is that if you have people on your side, that's a good thing. Like you don't want to get lynched, and you want people to listen to you no matter what role you have. Of course, as Mafia, you can also just avoid attention, but it would be even stronger play if you can direct attention onto others and control, because then you have more power to determine the path of the game, which is always very powerful. So like that big inherent bias, like people voting for people they like, that's a good thing to be in Mafia games. Someone that people like or want to listen to. Like they don't necessarily need to like you, but they at least need to not want to not listen to you. So yeah. So like the big inherent bias is maybe not that bad. Another yeah.
Oh, go ahead. Well, I was gonna say, kind of on that note, because I saw in the chat here too a really great comparison to sports. And I know that, one value you hold here, thingy, is at the end of the day to turn this into a spectator sport in a lot of ways. We look at something like the NFL, if this might help contextualize it as well. It's definitely not perfect. When you add in human factors like referees and things like that. One thing that I think is important to know, and I've seen Shakespeare talk about this too, is how do you measure, the best wolf, and how do you measure the best villager? And so I would compare it, most to, you look at someone like a defensive line player in the NFL. Their job is to disrupt, right? If they're doing their job, you're hearing their name a lot, right? That I could, akin to the wolf that's pushing the villagers the most, is power wolfing, right? Whereas you look at a defensive back in the NFL, if you never hear their name, they're doing a fantastic job because the ball's not being thrown their way. So it's just as critical to have a wolf who may be steering things behind the scenes and be the most well-read, everyone thinks they're a villager and then it gives them the opportunity to steer the conversation. So I think you need a little bit of both, and it's difficult to measure either and then compare them. And that's why this all gets so difficult, because there are so many different types of skill sets to every single type of role. So that's kind of something that I also think about when I think about, especially I love to play Wolf. That's something I think about too, is where you make that impact, and you can be a different wolf in different games, just like you can be a different villager. So I'll piggyback on their thingy man as well. So.
Holy Flair wrote in the chat. He did this as a joking suggestion, but people have suggested this before, that jury members or people voting in the games should have to write a 1,000-word essay on why you picked who you did. Basically, they need to give an explanation. I can say that is not feasible for the jury. That is simply why they're not doing it. Like, again, this is almost a full-time job for the jury to have to read all these games, have to read them again, have to discuss with the other people, have to make clear why they think these people should advance, etc., etc. It's a hell of a job, and we're very thankful to the people doing it. So it's just not feasible to have these explanations. Also because posting these explanations would only lead to, let's be honest, more drama. Like, then people would have to nitpick and be, oh, but how did I not fit that? I think everything you're writing here fits to my game. Or I
X, Y, and Z.
Yeah. So what's up with that, right? So that's why we're not doing for the jury. I don't think we can expect it, especially of the players who or maybe even just wanting to leave the site after playing and just one and done, right? So it's just not feasible. It's basically why we're doing it. And for the jury part, it's not going to provide a good result anyway. Ryan, do you have any closing thoughts on the subject matter before we move on?
Yeah, I've got takes.
Yeah. Ryan's got takes.
I've been kind of sitting here brewing stuff around in my head. So, can we all agree that the player who wins, the MVP, whatever you want to call it, is the player who gives their faction the best chance to win the game?
Provisionally, yes, but one thing I've wanted to bring up for the past 10 minutes is I think it's futile to try to rate people based on one game.
I agree.
Like, it is. I think the best player, and I think that's what we will all agree on, is the best player is the player who will maintain the highest win rate across many different games.
Yeah.
And there's a key difference here between playing repeatedly with the same group and playing repeatedly with strangers. And I think for the format of the Mafia Championship, it often has to be the case. Will this person be able to stomp on strangers repeatedly? That's the question. I think that's the question often not answered by the voting even. But Ryan, please keep going.
So, I agree with that. I think, regardless, anything that involves, so there are maybe ways to try to make this a little bit more objective. Like, for example, you could make a bunch of criteria and then have every jury member vote on a scale from 1 to 7 for every player for each one of those criteria. But that's a lot of work.
And it will also require those criteria all being equal to each other.
Right. Well, they don't necessarily have to be equal. You can weight them differently, and that's fine. But someone mentioned that, maybe a criteria could be how well do they communicate with their Mafia partners if they're Mafia? Or how well do they communicate their reads if they're Town? Or how effective are they at getting their reads across? Or how accurate are the reads? These are categories which you, in theory, could try to make a scale of them. I don't know how well that would work.
Yeah.
My biggest thing, I don't have any solutions to this. My biggest thought here is that if you have a jury, they are going to be biased. You cannot get around that. And I think trying to claim that you have an unbiased jury is the wrong way to go about this. People are going to vote for people that they like. Everybody has subconscious biases. They're going to either vote for people that they share a playstyle with because they like that, or vote for someone that has a different playstyle because it surprises them. One of those are going to be true, and for every person it's different. Everybody has unconscious biases. So my spicy take is that I want to say it's impossible, or at least at the current way to run, to make an objective or even accurately subjective Mafia Championship winner. I think anyone that you claim winner, or any system that claims a winner, is going to be flawed, to where a different jury in a different set of circumstances would pick differently given the same set of games.
And I agree with that. So I want to wrap this bit up with some thoughts of my own. I agree completely. And this goes back to Beck saying this is essentially Well, it's two things. This is a spectator sport. We want it to be a spectator sport, and we want it to be community bonding. To the spectator part, we have this theme around it as a championship because it's fun. It gives everyone an excuse to follow, and it's fun. You wanna watch these games and see who wins and who does well, right? So at the end, you want the winner to be someone that you could stand behind and say, "Oh, that's a good winner." That's essentially what we're aiming for. That's our a level of success. The criteria here. We want to be satisfied with the winner, and I think people so far have been very satisfied with all the winners. They have been deserving winners. We can't know if they were the best player at that given point in time, but they were all deserving winners, and everyone was satisfied. I think that's what we can reach for. I think that's what we can aim for. And to elaborate, the Mafia Championship, because this is a big confusion. So I wanted to have this whole discussion because I think it's very interesting. And in a way, what I say now nullifies some of the discussion, but it doesn't totally, because we can always strive to make it better. I always want to make the competitive side better, because the competitive side is also fun, and this is also about fun. It's a game. We want to have fun with it, right? But we also want to, what's also fun, and this speaks to my values behind this championship, what's also fun is making friends and building bonds. And that is the true goal of the Mafia Championship, is to bring people together. So this is an excuse to, excuse for that. Like, us 5 people, I'm going to allow myself to say, wouldn't be right here without the championship. And so many people out there would not know each other if not for the championship. And there have been many other great things done right in the Mafia world. This is just like one of them. I think it's a great thing. I'm gonna say, right? But it's imperfect in so many ways. Like, it being a forum is great in many ways, but if anything, the forum format is the worst for a championship setting. We have people in different time zones. Like, people aren't playing at the same time. When you play it live or video or browser, people are there at the same time from the start of the game to the end of the game, for the most part, like, unless they leave, then whatever, right? So, like, that in itself, like, you don't watch a soccer match and then someone leaves the game all of a sudden. They're all there for the duration of the game. Like, that mere fact in its own makes this not a true championship. Like, that's already a bad start to it. And people, especially in a forum setting, people are coming from so many different play styles, and they're used to so many different things. And like, we try to have a different setup each year to accommodate that, to at least not make it favor the same communities each season. But even that is not perfect. Like, you can't, like, if you had a soccer championship, you couldn't just change rules each year to, like, okay, well, now we want to favor Ireland this year, now we want to favor Australia next year, right? So that in itself just makes this a project that's never going to be perfect. So that's why my emphasis is that it's not the goal to make this a perfect championship, because that's an unachievable goal. The goal is to make it fun and competitive. We could try to improve the competitive side as much as we can, but we must never down prioritize the social aspect and the community bonding aspect. And I already think, like, some of these games, they can sometimes get a bit serious, and like, I hate to see it as an organizer. Like, I hate to see, and it's also not good for the town, at least, like, for people to jump in each other's hair and be angry and upset with each other. Like, I just hate to see that. You like, the town needs to work well together. It's good for the Mafia, right? Anyways, so that's the goal behind the whole thing. We have 3 minutes left. We may be going a bit over time. I think let's try to let's talk for maybe 15 more minutes. I hope you are in for a chat. I hope you guys are in for it as well, because I do have some things that I definitely want to touch on. I'm going to read something out loud for you guys, because the Mafia Championship is not the only Mafia Championship in existence. And I don't know how many of you are aware of this. I wouldn't be surprised if Shakespeare is aware of this, there being other championships out there. But there are real life championships out there. There's something called the annual Mafia World Cup. There is something called the US Open Mafia Championship. And I think there's also European Championship. Now, these aren't that popular. It's a few clubs, often Eastern European clubs, that have gotten together, and they've done this thing in Las Vegas each year or something like that. So, like, that's why people maybe haven't heard of it. But I think what they're trying to do is cool, like, and they're trying to, like, build something. And like, I have a dream myself that I want to build this, and I hope maybe we can hook up with them or whatever. Like, because the difficult thing is that people play with different rules. But they have these clubs that maybe, I suppose, play with sort of the same sets of rules. But I want to read how they're doing, because how they're doing this championship, like the system they have, because I think that might be interesting to talk about in relation to what we've just talked about, because you've been talking about having more games and doing a point system and such. So I'm just going to read out loud. This is the Mafia World Cup, right? So every registered participant will play 10 games in the first round on, this is in August. The best 20 players will play 3 more games in the second round. And the best 10 players will then play 1 final game. And then there's a award ceremony, a post-award gala. The best players will split the monetary prize. So there's a prize on stake, right? And there's a ranking system. The rankings will be determined as follows. 4 points for the win and 1 point for the loss. The Don and the Sheriff will receive an additional 1.5 points for the win and will have half points subtracted for the loss. So the Sheriff, I assume, is the cop or the zero roll. The Don, I'm actually not sure what is. Do any of you guys know?
The Don looks for the Sheriff.
Oh, okay. All right. Additional points will be added for the best move. Okay, so that's already very subjective, in my opinion. And for the best play, 2 points. A point will be subtracted from a player who receives 4 warnings and gets eliminated from the game. 2 points will be subtracted from a player for getting a yellow card for unethical conduct. Points collected in the second round will be multiplied by 1.25. Blah, blah, blah. So they have like a somewhat basic point system, but they have a point system, but also with a subjective criterion there. So what I mostly take away from this is that the 10 games that they have to play, I don't myself agree that is a sufficient sample size, even. So, I mean, that already makes it somewhat flawed. So to speak to your point earlier, Shake, like in a forum setting especially, like you would have to play, in my opinion, at least hundreds of games for any one person.
We already went over the fact that the player with the most games has 400 games or something. This is like throwback to an hour and a half ago. Like here,
yeah.
I will never get behind this moving of goalposts, but let me try to explain what Liars Club does, because like these Russian American folks and other Eastern Europeans, we've also thrown our money behind our standing. We've developed a system, and we said, look, yes, you cannot reasonably play hundreds of games, but in the course of say 8 games, you will play maybe 25 to 30 day phases. And we say, look, let's give you 0 points for every day phase where you do poorly and 1 point for every day phase you do well. And suddenly when you run this through the huge gun, so in Liars Club events, usually you have about 8 games in the regular season and another 6 games in the playoffs, something comparable to about 13 games. Now let's take this system, which I've done, and put it into the Super Mafia All-Stars, which is the group that produces by and far the most volume of games out of any group. They produce something like 80 to 90 games a year, or at least when Ryozilla is not busy being a dad. By the way, Ryozilla, congratulations on being a great dad. But when you take this and you put it into like 80 games a year for some people, which translates to something huge like 250 day phases, suddenly you start seeing a huge correlation between win rate and like just how well you do day to day. So my conception and our conception has always been, let's not score games, let's score days. When you're alive, is your team benefiting from your aliveness? Immediately after you die, is your team crumbling because you died? Or is your team going really strongly? Like, can you benefit your team post that? So like there's a huge write-up, it's about 10 pages of descriptions. But the TLDR is, I agree that you cannot play reasonably many games, but you can always play reasonably many days. And that's where you get the multiplier for the day phases. So I think my suggestion has always been, make the Mafia Championship more games, but also more days. And you get certainly more sample size out of this.
How do you score people who die early then?
You essentially, like, you're never gonna die early too often. Like that's just not gonna happen. So it balances out. You know.
Okay.
And if you die, like part of the perspective here is, if you die, like that's one component. The other component is, did your team win the game? Like there's 2 components. But the other perspective is, if you're dying early and your team is losing after that, you're not doing a good job, right? If you get executed, you're not doing a good job. If you die at night, but you kill the mafia, or your team kills the mafia immediately after that, you did a good job, kind of, and the system captures that.
So what if you're a well-reputed player and at some point your dominance is established and you're just always killed on night 1? Is it then still your fault that your team loses each time?
You're kind of hoping that the social system behind this counteracts it.
Right.
But also, if you're the most dominating player ever, eventually people will realize, wait, we need to hunt for the PRs. Like that's why you add PRs to the game. That's one of the hugest reasons to have PRs in the game.
All right.
And you bounce it around with the setup as opposed to the dominance of the player. Like eventually you're gonna just have like the beefiest cop who you just have to kill. Like that's the convergence of like how you would actually conduct this. And I think maybe the Russian guys have done exactly that. Again, colloquially we call this Russian mafia. I'm not just saying that Russian players play it. Like the system that Tingy read to us a moment ago is for Russian mafia. And maybe I think they've arrived at the same conclusion, which is it's really hard to play as the Don and as the Sheriff, but if you win, props to you.
Do any of you other guys have comments relating to this?
I I was actually going to parlay this like partially into something about what was always said about the voting system we had, where it was always hard for the night one kill to advance in champs. It's always been one of those assumed things that the night one kill, very hard to get votes because we only had 1 day of impact, right? So it's always so a point system has always been interesting to me in that I think when I heard you bring up the Russian Mafia point system, it mattered less about days. Like you just need to win the game, and if you happen to roll a roll, your points matter more. Which I could go into why I think that's kind of poor, but that's besides the point. I think weighing PRs more heavily is generally weaker because I think it's a lot easier to win games via PRs than it is to win games via playing well. But that's another story for another time. The point system, to me, especially when it's like, all right, best play, or how well did you play through how many days, or did your team crumble after you die? It benefits you best to more or less play towards the middle. And I'm not saying that to like disparage, anyone who's won your Liars Club or anyone who's won the World Cup games or anything like that, because you obviously had to play well to accrue points.
They're talking about CPB. CPB, I hope you're watching.
I don't mind CPB. I don't like his play style, but I can respect it the way he plays.
Shots fired.
The best way to get points is just live enough that your impact is felt, even if there's ways to counterbalance it with like, oh, did your team crumble afterwards? Then you played well. But it's always good to be like, all right, I'm alive day 3. I've imposed my will on these 2 wolves. My alignment's probably going to win, but the wolves didn't respect me enough to kill me at any point. I'm probably going to accrue a good amount of points just via that alone. So as much as I'm just like, there's still skill involved to accrue points, no doubt. I've always found the point system a lot harder to. In my head, I've found the point system a lot harder to justify because it's a lot harder to justify. A, subjectively, how do you accrue points? B, how does accruing points dying early benefit / hurt you more than being alive more? And three just kind of like your impact on the game is always going to vary regardless of skill set. I could be really, really bad at the game and still kill all 3 wolves. Like, just by nature of how Mafia is, I can fluke my way into 3 wolf kills and still play terribly. So it's so hard to like subject to just in my head get around. We're accruing points via very specific things, but I could still probably play bad and still accrue points, right? So that's always been the hard thing with me about point systems.
So that's the difficulty of designing the system that Beck was talking about, and I think that's where you really need to go to like the hardcore measurable things that like we can all agree on. Like, so the thing, I think across our Mafia games we can agree on 2 things: winning is better than losing, and killing players of the opposite alignment is by and far better than killing players of your own alignment. Like sometimes you need to bust and then you better win. Like so sometimes you need to bust and then you better win. But by and far, day to day, killing players, like executing players of the opposite alignment is the best play you can make. That's how all of these games are designed. And these two things are very measurable. Like I don't think it's difficult to assign points to this. One, very good, zero, very bad. Like I've been driving this point forward for
Yeah,
2 years, and I just want to have it on
yeah,
video
and
finally.
and like I understand that point. And that's kind of like why I was like trying to talk it out and think it through, because say because again I to bring it back to a champs example, in season 5 game 6 I rolled wolf. Both my partners got rolled day 1 and 2, just completely rolled, and day 2 would not have I would not have been able to survive at all if I didn't completely bust my second partner who got lynched, Michael. Like it was impossible for us to not get out of a day without bussing. It's so because of that, this had it. It's something where it's like, oh, your wolf partner died. Sure, you could get a one really bad if you didn't lynch your wolf partner. But if your wolf partner did get lynched, but you had to tactically bust in order to win the game, it's very hard to then be like, oh well, was the bus bad, or was the bus bad because they didn't lynch a villager, or was the bus good because they can win the game off of it? It's very difficult. It's a very difficult gray area where points are always going to have, in my opinion, gray areas.
All right, guys. I want to wrap this up because we're already well over time. I do want to ask one last question, which is asked by a user on Mafia Universe, because I also want to make time for people's questions, of course. And thank you for sending in questions. And then after that question, I'll move on to the final question, and I'll mention it now so you guys can prepare. I want guesses from you on who wins this season. And this is just for fun. And I know Beck, he already gave a guess last podcast, so it's on you, Ryan, Shake, and Dave to predict the winner of the season. You cannot mention anyone from an ongoing game, please. Fate Accompli asks, what is the risk to one's reputation and potential damage later on if he or she is scum and busses their teammates? Could actions/choices and early games hurt you later on in the tournament, assuming one makes it that far?
You can only make the argument I don't bust once before you you can only make the argument I don't bust until you bust somebody, and then like any argument you can do is like that until you break your own personal meta.
Yep.
Then you can keep sticking to those arguments. I have a personal meta in Avalon that I will not break until somebody gives me $1,000, and when somebody gives me $1,000, I'll break it. But like you have to have, like, everybody is aware of this after a certain point. Like personal meta doesn't matter anything until somebody breaks it, and then you can no longer say anything.
I'll say too, I think it can be a great advantage. I'm gonna reference my own play last year, but in my wild card game, I played a certain way as a wolf, and then I entered the finale against other players who I just played against in wild card again as a wolf, and I went in and I changed how I played. I changed how I said certain things, how I responded to certain posts, how I acted. Maybe a little bit more nonchalantly than I might have in last game. For that very reason, to reset people's expectations for how I was playing. And the immediate reaction was, well, he's playing different. He can't be the same alignment. So I agree to an extent. It can definitely damage how people view you. But I think in a lot of ways, Villager or Wolf, there's opportunities, again, to reinvent yourself game to game, if you have that skill set. So, yeah, I think there's negatives to it, but I think there's a lot of positives if you know how to bring that out as well. So.
All right, excellent. And now, time for the big question. Predictions, winner predictions. Ryan, who you got?
Okay. Give me a second. I'm scrolling through the player list. I haven't followed too closely this season, and I don't know who's playing. So if I say the name of someone who is in an ongoing game, I swear I was not aware.
All right, yeah.
I swear.
I
will find someone. Come back to me.
All right, Dave. Let's start with you.
Yeah, I have a couple of names that I've actually looked at when I was looking at the player list. One from one of the already complete games, game 3. I know that votes now yet, but there is one player I'm looking from there. Just letting you know that. Now onto people in games not played. For me, like the two main players I'm looking at are ironically both in the same qualifier, Game 7. First, to be the corporate chill. No one said last episode. I'm going to say it. Smart Bomb is a really good player, and y'all should absolutely look at him as a potential for it. Great Wolf player, solid town player. I love watching Smart Bomb play, especially when he rolls Wolf. I think he is a master tactician as a Wolf. And Silverkeith. I think Silverkeith is good as really good to have as both alignments. Absolutely fun to watch. One of my favorite players actually to watch during season 5 in, I believe he played qualifiers, wildcards, and he subbed into finals. I enjoyed watching him in all facets. Just an absolute value player to have, regardless of your alignment. I value him a lot as a player.
Yeah, I think Smart Bomb played in a wildcard game in the previous season, and Silverkeith may actually, I'm not sure, maybe the player with the having played this game or playing this game, maybe the player with the most experience in the Mafia Championship. I think, is this maybe his 4th season playing? Because he's
played a lot. That much I do know.
Yeah. So that's a lot of experience, and Beck can attest to the fact that having a season's worth of experience can definitely help, and the same can General Handkerchief. All right, Shake, what's your take?
Whoever is representing Mafia Universe, that's my money is always on the house. I'm not sure if Dom said the same thing.
Smart Bomb.
Smart Bomb is representing Mafia Universe.
Whoever's represent, like any of the 20 Mafia Universe representatives I hope there's not many substitutes this year. Serious stuff. Like anytime somebody needs to get subbed out of the game, that's like super bad. Like that's bad for the championship, bad for the game. I really hope that like as you're recruiting more and more communities into this, like people don't need to get subbed out. Like that's such a huge issue, and it creates like a lot of contention when there are 20 Mafia Universe representatives in it. The end.
Yeah, actually, to address that, that is also one of the reasons, or well, it's the main reason I think that we went down from 187 or 86 communities last year to 165 this year to sort of consolidate. It's also a difficult thing because, like, actually, let's take Beck. He was from a community that might have been expected to produce inactive players. I don't think that's unfair to say, right, Beck? Some of your other players came and play, and some of them were a bit inactive. Just from the volume the games had on Novosiv, which is where you're from, you wouldn't have expected it to produce Beck. The same with Panther from the community where he repped, and so you have many examples of that. Like, so that's why I also want to give communities a chance to actually, let's just put it frankly, to produce a good representative, because a lot of communities definitely have that in them, have that potential. That's why I'm sometimes hesitant to just write off a community because they've sent an active representative, because sometimes they then send a hell of a representative the next year, right? But it is a problem, I agree, the substitutes, and we do a lot to try and avoid it. Like, we have 2 to 3 confirmation checks before the game. We don't just accept a sub when they ask for it, unless they tell us it's an emergency. We do try to like sort of talk them into, are you sure you can't? Please keep playing this. It really hurts the game if you have to sub out. And a lot of time.
It's funny because I do agree about how, like, you know, subs can hurt, but sometimes like for sub, because I know I was a pregame substitute. I was in season 5. I was originally Mpoof's substitute for Mini Mafia, and then someone pregame.
Shout out to Mpoof.
Shout out my guy Mpoof. And pregame game 6, someone wasn't confirming, so I got the PM on Sunday. Yo, can you join one of these two games? I think it was either game 6 or game 7. And I said I can play game 6 as hours. So then I joined game 6, and you know, when you're a sub, you come in like right, either not expecting to play, or you come ready to play, and it's the opportunity to kind of prove yourself even as a substitute. Like, you don't want to have to go in and play because you want, you know, the person you're repping to do well, who's repping you to do well. But as a substitute, you always want to be ready to go, and it's a good opportunity where if you weren't expecting to show yourself in the championships, say you come in pre-game or say day 1, someone just doesn't post and comes in, it's a good opportunity to prove yourself. So
Yeah.
I subbed in a wild card.
Yeah. So like from that unique, so I kind of come from that unique perspective of, as a championship, do you want subs? No, but but as someone who had to sub, I had to read Mpoof's game while I was on vacation to make sure I was ready in case he needed to leave.
Yeah.
And then I got the call to go in. So for you subs out there, be ready to be called in if need be. It's your chance to prove yourself.
Yeah. And I mean, everyone loves like an underdog story, and it's sort of you're sort of an underdog having to sub in, right? So you have the potential for a great story there, right? All right, I just want to wrap this up by mentioning.
What about my takes?
Oh, right. Oh, yeah. Oh,
Did you
all right,
find
right.
the name you recognized?
I scrolled.
All right.
Okay.
Who you
So,
got, Ryan?
I gotta trash my community a little bit. I don't think anyone from TOS or anyone from any of the TOS offshoot communities are gonna go far. Sorry.
Wow.
Well, seeing as Flo is banned, I can believe that.
No. Let's not go there. We're not going there. Please, no. No.
To those who don't
Taboo
know, Flow Omega is a community that sent a representative and turned out to be a Hydra representative. It was several people playing on one account, and I mean, they managed to do quite well. They got Michelin's the first day, so bravo.
Don't see anything wrong with that.
We are not talking about them.
I'm sorry.
All right, so Ryan, who you got?
I recognize a few names. There is one person I have played in a forum game with that I remember the name of, and I've also played video with them. And they're also in chat. So I will say, for the memes, I will say Rich.
Oh, Jesus.
We'll see where it goes.
I love Rich, honestly. Like, genuinely love watching Rich play.
Once again, I have no clue if any of these people are in games. I genuinely have
Rich's
no
game
idea.
is finished, yeah.
Rich's game is finished. He was on the town team and the town won, so that's at least a positive, I guess. Yeah. All right. So I want to mention two things here. I want to mention three things. I'll start by mentioning that we have a podcast next week as well. We have another one on Sunday, 4 p.m. It's again going to be a general podcast. Stay tuned to find out who the guests are. We also have a podcast the day before, Saturday, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will have the very first post-mortem. We'll be talking about Game 1, and I will have 4 players from Game 1 with me here on the podcast. I will have Achromatic. I will have Hollowcat, one of the winning Wolves. The Wolves won that one. I will have Mr. Tweetums. And I will have Frinkles, the cowboy himself, who roleplayed as a cowboy. Always very interesting to have unique styles in the championship. That's what we love. Like, again, going back to it being a spectator
if he
sport.
doesn't wear a cowboy hat, I'll be disappointed.
Yeah. All right, you heard that, Frinkles. You better be wearing a cowboy hat. All right. So now with that out of the way, stay tuned. Next weekend, Saturday and Sunday, 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I also just want to quickly mention the games that are starting tomorrow. We have 2 games starting tomorrow. We have Game 5. It's going to be a 48-24 game. We have a former, I think, wildcard or finalist serial killer playing. He's come back to play again. He had to sub out the last time, so that's exciting to see what he can bring. We have Cabbage, MU regular. We have Personality Cafe represented. They've done well in the past. I mean, we have a lot of good names. We have a former finalist, Violet. Not to forget. We have TK as well. It's a good lineup, and we have new communities as well. So this is very exciting to see. Just want to quickly mention it.
TK, very underrated player. I'm excited to watch him again.
Yeah.
I played with him in Wildcards 1 in Season 5. He's very good.
Game 6. This is one of the, I think, one of the top 3 consensus game lineups that people are most excited about. We have DS, Jagged Jimmy J, 2 former finalists. We have Cobalt, a veteran of the game. We have Smogon, who's done very well. And we have Mafia CM, a site dedicated to Mafia. And we also have some new communities. So this is very exciting. So these are the 2 games. We have Fatmo, Play Diplomacy, also made the finals before. So 2 very exciting game lineups starting tomorrow. Be sure to stay tuned for that and join us on the spectator chat in Mafia Universe Discord. Again, if you're not following that, you probably are, because I think most of you got the link from there. But if you're not following it, on Mafia Universe, we have a dedicated Discord. Go into the chat, join the server, ask for permissions to join a spectator chat, which is where we have hundreds of people commenting on the games. It's very exciting. Definitely be sure to join that. And the final thing I want to say is thanks. Thanks everyone tuning in, and thanks to you guys for joining me here on the podcast. It was a pleasure. It was a lot of fun to talk about the differences, the different variants, and it's exciting to see that we all share the same love for the game, and we all have the same shared goal, that we want to make other people love the game. Spread the word, spread the good word. What is it you call those wanting to spread religion? Christianity and other religions.
Apostles, missionaries.
Missionaries, yeah. Yeah. We shall be the Mafia missionaries. All right. If any of you guys, and actually I want to say this to everyone, if anyone has any, because we also talked about the Mafia Championship and how it can maybe be improved and how it certainly has been improved throughout the years, we're always very open to feedback. And after this season, as the previous seasons, we will be also asking all the representatives what their feedback was. I think we'll also be doing, like, wanting to be taking that more seriously. So I will be personally going to all the sites, their sites, and like hunting them down and going to the emails and just making sure they respond, because something that does happen is that the people whose feedback is maybe most valuable are those that didn't enjoy the experience, or those who aren't responding to the first PM, right? So we gotta be a bit more stubborn and try to get that feedback, right? All right. Again, thanks guys. It was a pleasure.
Thank you.
I'm sure I'll be seeing some of you on podcast again. I hope to do this throughout the series. Yeah. And I also know some of you play Video Mafia, so maybe we'll see each other there.
Maybe you can come join us on Video Mafia one day.
If it fits your times, I'm game. If it fits your times. That's why I had to quit Super Mafia All Stars, unfortunately. It was very fun though. All right, guys. Thanks. And we out. Bye-bye.